Good afternoon. Welcome to the Steelers Sanctuary Podcast. I'm LeeAnn Lohman, joined today by Bob Quinn and Zach Franciscus, and we are here to do our weekly talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of what we saw during last week's game. So in this case, that would be week 6 with our big win over the Las Vegas Raiders, 32-13. Feels like for the first time this season, even though we had some wins early on, there's a lot more good than bad to talk about. Just not to say that nobody's on the hot seat. Two quick notable news items as it is currently Tuesday afternoon at almost 4 o'clock. We found out almost simultaneously today, Mike Tomlin's press conference, that Russell Wilson would be taking first team reps or splitting first team reps with Justin Fields this week, giving him the opportunity to really start week 7 against the New York Jets. Now, as you know, with Mike Tomlin, nothing is a guarantee. So we don't know for sure that that means he's starting. We don't know for sure that that doesn't mean he's starting. And I assume we'll learn more as the week goes on. We get closer to the actual game. The other piece of news that popped up was that Davante Adams is now officially not going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. I don't know who was holding out hope on that front, but it wasn't me. He did sign with the New York Jets, and so we will probably cover him, or we will definitely cover him in a lot more detail later this week when we film our Jets pregame show. You guys have anything you want to add on those two fronts before we get started? Bob, an hour, so be careful.
Yeah, I was going to say, I do, but I don't want us to. I think we should concentrate on our good, bad, and the ugly. I'm going to have a lot to say on Thursday and a little bit to say today.
Yeah, good.
Agreed.
Yeah, let's get us started with our good topics of the week. And since I'm already talking, I'll get it rolling. My good this week is probably Zach's good this week, and that is Najee Harris. I can't say enough good stuff about what a big game he had, especially in the face of all the criticism and adversity I think he's taken from the fan base, and particularly the local Pittsburgh media, who I don't feel like treat him very well. He rushed for 106 yards on 14 attempts with his average of 7.6 yards per carry, which is huge for Najee. If you know him, you saw points during this game where he was dragging defenders behind him. And if you've been a longtime fan like Zach and I have, this is not unfamiliar to you. You saw this in Alabama. What was different was that there was times this week where the offensive line wasn't blocking very well, and he was still managing to pick up yards, and that was impressive. So I was glad to see him return to his role as running back and not as our leading receiver like he was the week before. Zach, do you want to build on that?
Absolutely. You brought up an excellent point that it wasn't just that Najee had a great yards per carry. It wasn't just that in a game where he was supposed to step up, he did. It was the way he did it. Najee just decided that today was going to be a different game. And even the teammates were saying, I don't know what he ate this morning, but I need him to do it again because it was a willpower thing. Najee simply willed himself through the Raiders. And if you're, I know we were talking about the Raiders being a bad tackling team, a good tackling, a bad tackling team. No, you were going to stop Najee yesterday. So I was just now I need to see it continue. But what I actually like the sass that he responded with afterwards, because I want that sassy Najee. We're gonna need that more. So if the fallout for that is Najee being sassy to reporters afterwards, I'll take it for 100 yards a game. Great trade-off for me. So that's a wonderful good.
It was a career-long touchdown run for him, too, wasn't it?
36 yards? I think it was close, yeah.
Or close, yeah.
Yeah. My good is Justin Fields, which, you know, a lot of people were down on him for the passing. Did he have his best passing game? No. But, I mean, guys, you got to understand, that 4th and 1 play, there's only maybe 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the NFL who could pull that off. And when the play broke down and he just kind of escaped out to the left, he was gone. That wasn't a defensive lineman chasing him. That was a defensive back, and he left him in the dust. He had a couple of nice throws. He had a couple of bad throws. But overall, especially now with the news today, I got to really – praise him for how he's handled his 6-game audition. And I am really worried that this is going, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, really worried that this is going to cost us having him in free down the road when he wants to be a free agent. I think that all the quarterback hungry teams right now that are out there are going to take a long, hard look at Justin Fields, and I think they're going to throw massive amounts of money at him. We're not going to be able to say now to Justin, hey, we had faith in you all year. We had faith in you until the guy Tomlin wanted is coming back. So, whoopee, we got a 36-year-old.
Yeah, I agree. Moving on to the bad of the game. I should give my bad award to Kyle Brandt because I am none too happy that he did not give Najee Harris an angry run scepter this week. I'm really very angry about it. I might even throw out my t-shirt. But he doesn't play for the Steelers, so he's off the table, and I'm going to go with Broderick Jones. We talked about this a lot in our show yesterday, our post-game show, about the struggles that Broderick is having and what we think is causing them. But if you missed that, just to kind of recap, his overall PFF grade, and look, I understand that PFF is not the be-all, end-all, and I'm not being a hypocrite, but you have to have something to kind of put this in perspective for people. So his overall grade at PFF was a 46.8, which is just so low. His pass blocking grade was a 41.7, run blocking a little bit better at a 54.8. He had 5 penalties. He's had 5 penalties, which ties him, or I'm sorry, it puts him tied for 103rd out of 115 tackles in the league. And then his 5 sacks allowed puts him at 113th out of 115 tackles. So, I mean, it is not good, folks. This is ugly, especially considering that he's played 343 snaps, which is a lot. So I'm definitely worried. I think we saw him, there's a video going viral on Twitter right now of him kind of just watching the defender blow past him. I think there was other plays like that where it felt like his effort wasn't there. Zach Frazier is out right now, hurt, but in prior weeks, it wasn't like it was just this week. In prior weeks, you watch Zach Frazier push so hard, he'd push his guy off the screen. And Broderick Jones looked like he was a toddler going up against some of these guys. It just doesn't look good. So I don't know. We talked about this last night. What's going on with him? If this is a side effect of him being moved around a lot, or if this is maybe an injury that we don't, maybe that injury he had earlier this season is worse than we realize. We're going to find that out at the end of the season after he stunk all year. I don't know. Zach, what about you? Where's your bad?
Well, really quick to confirm what you said, I was watching the All 22 last night. After 2.5 drives, my heart couldn't take any more. I did not see I'm not kidding, a single positive play from Broderick. And It wasn't like he was mediocre, and it was bad. So yeah, mine though, and I like that I had to kind of nitpick a bit here. I was trying to think of bad. I'm like, wait a second, there's not a lot, but my expectations for Arthur Smith are raising. Every single win, every single time I see some growth, I don't want to stay where I am and be like, okay, now where can we go next? And I want to erase the what the fuck calls. I understand that our one toss play went for the 36-yard touchdown, but I think there was 7 or 8 in the games prior where that toss didn't work at all. So, and there's just certain plays that make me out loud say, what are you doing to the screen? Now, will I take that over Matt Canada any day? But I am further and further into the leaving the Canada behind and raising my expectations. And so a bad that I don't really want to put as a bad, but I guess I could, is I need Arthur Smith to now move up to that next rung and start erasing those silly throw stuff at the wall and see what works. We're coming into week 7. So now it's time to start moving forward with your identity.
How much do you think that matters with Russell Wilson if he steps in this week? Like, how much does that set Smith's plan back, or do you think it doesn't, or it moves it forward?
Actually, I think your bad affects Russell Wilson more. I think Arthur Smith will be fine setting it up. I think Broderick Jones could be the difference between Russell Wilson actually having a chance and Russell Wilson getting hurt on the first or second drive and then having to come in. So that revolving door that we got on the edges there, Russell Wilson has no chance.
Well, you do have
your bad makes more sense than mine.
Yeah, you do have to wonder what's going to happen to Russell Wilson. I mean, I understand that, when we saw him play last in Denver, he had some mobility, but I mean, it was not anywhere near Justin Fields' mobility. So in those times where we saw Justin able to turn something negative into something positive, do you know what I mean? How much will Russ be able to do that?
Yeah, you got to understand with Russell Wilson, he is the slowest processing quarterback in the NFL last year. Took him I want to say it was like 3.0 something seconds to throw the ball. And it was noticeably and surprisingly, the guy who was second worst was Justin Fields. So we have the two. Justin Fields has really worked on his processing. We'll see if Wilson with Smith's offense. But he was in a Sean Payton pre-snap read offense last year that is very quarterback friendly. If you can read the field, you can get the ball out of your hands quick. Drew Brees did it for years. Wilson couldn't thrive in that environment. He needs to sit and see one of the reasons why he throws such a nice deep ball is usually with a deep ball in Seattle, it was a 7-step drop, and you got DK Metcalf running that route, and you can just sit there and kind of look, and then boom, rainbow it up to him. He still has a nice deep ball, but I mean, if he's going to take 5 and 7-step drops in this offense, he's going to get killed. I mean, it's not even going to be close.
I said it to somebody today. It's like danger for good old Danger Russ. I mean, how's he going to survive with this offensive line? I think I don't know. I think it's foolhardy.
A big thing, and I'm trying to figure out why there's such a mass. It's not even a gap; it's a canyon between us and a lot of other media in Pittsburgh. Dale Lawley and I forget who else was the deep dive on Steelers.com. Almost immediately after, one of their first things was, well, I guess it's time to go to Russ. Like, how could you watch the game and your immediate reaction is that, and Bob, you just threw what they said in the fire. They're like, well, the reason we need Russell Wilson is because he's going to be able to look at that defense coming at him, and rather than get away like Justin is, he's going to be able to adjust this off. I'm like, what offense are you thinking he's running? So there's a gap between what we're thinking and so I don't know what that gap is. I don't know what the canyon is. I don't know why, but that really, so I've read a lot of Dale Lally stuff, and I don't consider him a wild out there takes. I don't know. That really, really surprised me. So I don't know why there's such a gap in what we're seeing that they're not, or what in reverse it's.
I agree with you. I think with a different offense, that's a possibility. But, you've got no offensive line protecting him, and then you've got no real weapons for him to throw to. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know. I agree with you. I felt like I was missing something or watching a different game than everybody else.
Which honestly brings me to my bad. My bad is also Justin Fields. Yeah. Because as good as he was with his legs and putting up, points and doing things that, I want to reiterate to all you Russell Wilson, he's going to improve our passing game. No, he's not. Trust me, he's not. And then you're going to watch all those plays that would have been made not get made. I think Orlovsky did a really good job of this, showing the hidden yardage yesterday on Get Up. But that being said, Justin Fields didn't close the door. He didn't close the deal. I would not bench him. I think he's the future, and I think we're risking the future by doing this. And again, we are saying this like it's happened just because Pelissero reported it. LeeAnn made a very good point. Mike Tomlin did not say Russell Wilson was the starter. He hinted at it. He said he's going to get starter reps, but until the game starts on Sunday night, we don't know. But that being said, I think had Justin maybe completed a couple of more passes, maybe not had that one play that got reversed on the roughing the passer interception, I think he could have slammed the door with a couple 100 yards and us winning through 32-13. Mm-hmm. I think, unfortunately, they're going to look at this. And the thing that irritates me the most is because if they make this change, and I'm going to emphasize if Mike Tomlin is stubborn. So no matter how good or bad he plays against the Jets, we're going to see it against the Giants too. So what we needed to be 6-2 could very well end up be 4-4, and at the bye week say, well, Russ, sorry it didn't work out. Doesn't matter because our season's over. Put the kid back in and see what happens.
I mean, Ben talked about it on his podcast, and it's, we've talked about it on the show before, and it's a big part of what I'm worried about is what does this do to Fields's, his comfort level, his confidence, do you know what I mean, in this team? I think you mentioned it earlier, Bob. I mean, I think, we've talked about it before. He took such a huge hit with the way he was treated in Chicago. It does make me worry, what will happen to him confidence wise.
And thank you, Jennifer, for it was Matt Williamson.
Yes.
That he was with. I appreciate that. So
Mike Tomlin seems to enjoy benching Chicago Bears quarterbacks.
That's true. That's true.
Now, I will say one thing really quick about this. What I'm hoping is that this is a different Justin Fields than we saw in Chicago, and I'm hoping this growth is legitimate because it's not just on the field, it's off the field. So I've been talking about what I'm the whole season about what I'm hoping Justin Fields' support system is saying to him. This is an important part for Justin Fields' support system and to see where he is mentally. Can he take this? Because I think if he's realistic, he's like, you know what? This is only going to be a temporary thing. I'm going to get back into this lineup. I just need to let this ride out. And if he can do that, then we don't deserve him, number one, but that will be another step in his maturity. So this proves we don't deserve Justin Fields.
He's got to be thinking in his head, like, Russ's old ass is surely going to get hurt at some point here. Do you know what I mean? And I'm going to get my spot back. But, you got to keep your head right. And I just hope that whatever's going on, we can say whatever we want here about what we think is happening. None of us know what's happening. And Mike Tomlin is loved by his players for a reason. And it's not because he treats them like shit. And it's not because he doesn't talk to them and all of those things. I think that he's, my hope is that if this is what's really happening and Wilson's going to play, he's talking to him about, why we're making this choice right now. Do you know what I mean? And I believe Tomlin when he said this isn't an anti-Justin thing. It's that we've got this guy and we haven't seen what he can do. And I guess, it does make, Backo brought up earlier that it makes some sense if you're going to play him for 2 games now and kind of see what he can do. And then you head into the bye and you can make your decision for the harder part of the season. I guess, there's some logic in that. I don't know. I struggle with it because I wouldn't have benched Fields, but once again, Mike Tomlin didn't ask my opinion.
And for some reason, I think people have all of a sudden assumed that now the Jets are a lay down, the Giants are a lay down. They're not. The Jets are, they lost to Buffalo. There's some disarray and dysfunction with the Jets, but they are going to be the most talented team we have played. Whether they can put it together or not is a valid question, but talent-wise, they are the best team we're going to play so far this season. And I know we laugh about the Giants, and there was some talk they might be the worst football team. The Giants have maybe the best defense in the NFL at this point. They are dominant. They are keeping them in games. The Giants' offense is a joke without Malik Neighbors.
We lost to the legitimate worst team in the NFL last year. So, that stuff to me is meaningless. You know what I mean? Because we'll show up against the Ravens and beat them, but then somehow not be able to win against the 2023 Patriots.
Yeah, the Giants beat the Eagles and the Commanders drop a game this week. They're only 1 game out.
Yeah, they're not terrible.
They're pretty good, and there's a good chance Malik Neighbors is back this week, and that changes their offense dramatically. With that defense, that's the defense we think we have, the way they've been playing. Because, how they won a game in Seattle is beyond me. Yeah. But they're playing great. They don't have names, but they're playing great.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to our ugly. So my ugly kind of applies to the Steelers, but also applies to the whole NFL. And that's really the officiating, problems that are happening right now in the league. It's shocking. I saw Brooke Pryor tweet after the Jets game that she thinks that maybe the officials are getting paid by flag. They're throwing out so many of them. But, it's not just that they're throwing out so many because they're calling the games fairly and they're calling the games equitably. I think we're seeing something different. And we're also seeing a rise, it feels like a rise in mistaken game-changing flags, flags they throw that are incorrect, that change the tempo or could change the tempo of the game. And I think we saw it as early as week 1 with some of those flags, against the Atlanta Falcons, TJ Watts, where they called him off sides and they came back after the game and were like, oh, sorry, we were wrong. He wasn't. Well, we won that game, but what if we hadn't? Do you know what I mean? And those are the kinds of things. I understand your team shouldn't put yourself in a position where that costs you, but it happens all the time in the NFL. One play, one touchdown, one score, one penalty, cost you the game. And then with this most recent game, there was a lot of rumblings from Raiders fans about the calls that were made that favored the Steelers. And I think as Steelers fans, we're like, hey, it's going our way. We're not upset. But I think if you asked any of us outside of a game, most of us really want the games to be called fairly. Do you know what I mean? We feel like they're called unfairly against us a lot. And however you're going to call it, ticky-tacky or straightforward or whatever, just make it equal. And Ben Roethlisberger said on his show that he felt like that roughing the passer on Fields was Justin pulled the defender down on top of him, and that this is, he said it's smart. He's like, this is kind of a new move in the league right now, for guys to draw these penalties. And if you go back and watch the film, it's hard to tell. I mean, is he trying to push him off? Is he trying to pull him down? Is he just trying to brace him so he doesn't take all his weight? I don't know, but his hands are definitely there. So, that definitely, I can understand why the Raiders fans were upset. I felt that wasn't a strong penalty. I'd have been furious if it had been the other way around. So I wish the NFL would get their act together with the officiating. They talk a lot about player safety, and that takes me to my other gripe all the time about them not blowing the whistle, but that's a whole different topic. They're going to get somebody killed. But you can't keep promoting player safety when you aren't making sure that the refs are calling the games equally and fairly. And it shouldn't be a situation where you're like, oh, we got that officiating crew. We know we're screwed this week. It's just a shame. It should be more equal.
Yeah, John's got John in the comments has got a good point.
Yeah.
The NFL is the only major sport that does not have full-time referees.
Yes.
I could understand that in the 70s. I cannot understand it in 2024.
Well, in the 70s, the players had to work second jobs. Do you know what I mean? So, I get it. Not now.
It's not like you don't got the money.
Right.
I mean, pay these guys. I would bite my tongue bloody if they were paying these referees full-time salaries and they were still performing like this. But if they were full-time and doing nothing but studying the game and seeing that, then, there could be an improvement. But then again, you got guys like Jerry Jones out there who are like, oh, that gives us something to talk about when the refs are bad. So it's not going to change anytime.
It's not going to change, but I would like to see it be something where, it's the only game. I mean, the only job in the world where you don't get penalized for screwing up. I mean, if you work at McDonald's and you burn the fries and you keep burning the fries, at some point you get fired or you get put on mopping the floor duty or whatever. But in the NFL, they're just like, we said sorry and you can't talk about us.
Or you have to go referee NBA games. That's one or the other.
I remember one of the most fascinating articles that I ever read, and from the person who made me want to go into sports journalism, Peter King, got this incredible in-depth access to the NFL refs and wrote a multi-piece thing on the day-to-day thing on what happens. And the penalties are so minimal. Like in the microcosm of being an NFL ref, they're harsh. But in the general scope of life, the worst thing that can happen to a ref is they don't get to ref a playoff game. I'm not kidding. That's the worst thing that can happen to an NFL ref. And they're penalized based on points. It's an infallibility problem that I believe English football has as well, where if the ref says it, that there's no explanation necessary. And what we have now is, I think the worst thing that happened is bringing former refs in to comment on it because we can't do anything about it. If a former ref says, well, that's a bad call, we're not going to change. So it's a foundational issue. But I'd like to thank Bill Cowher and Troy Polamalu early for making me understand what it means to be a Steelers fan and the relationship with the officials in the 2005 playoff game against the Colts. When that interception was overturned and Bill Cowher went to Troy on the sideline and said, listen, no matter what, we go back on. That was overturned. Troy jumped up, put his helmet back on, and we went back to work. I'm like, oh, Steeler fans, we expect the refs to be bad, and then we just get back up when it happens. And
Yep.
so when the Raiders thing, I'm sorry, Raiders fans might not like it. We earn the calls going our way from what we don't get most of the time. So I'm a little bit, but my ugly is something that we're all going to talk about a lot. Is every single thing following the win. Everything following the win has been awful. I don't understand the immediate aftermath from most of the people in the media that we should immediately go to Wilson. The losing out of Devontae Adams, which made a lot more people angrier than it should. There's so many things that are. I don't like when positive things are happening this season, and it seems like our knee-jerk reaction is, "Oh wait, it can't go this well. Let's hold back a bit." I want a fun season where all the train is moving forward, and it kind of feels like we're moving forward, and then one really big guy has his foot out on the ground, hold us back a bit. And I don't know where that guy is. There's lots of conspiracy theories about it, but there's no reason to do what we're doing, considering what we have. As I saw an identity forming, and I was talking about on our podcast before, I saw the hint of a blueprint and a foundation, and this we might as well throw it out, because we're going to have to start over with confidence in Justin Fields if we bring it back in later. So frustration overall, and the win was short-lived because, my goodness, the Steelers stamped that out of me quick.
Yeah. My ugly is, I could easily go with some of the decisions that have been made, but it's the offensive line as a whole. LeeAnn brought up Broderick Jones and his PFF grade. Well, let me tell you about our other bookend tackle, Dan Moore, who also got, he didn't get below 50, but he didn't get much above it, 56.4 for the Las Vegas game. And bear in mind, he wasn't blocking Max Crosby. Broderick Jones was. And there was still plenty of pressure from both sides. And topping that off with Zach Frazier, he's going to be out this week, it sounds like. Doesn't sound like it's a long-term injury, which is great. But, yeah, Ryan McCollum did a nice job against the Raiders defense filling in at the end. We're talking about the Jets defense. I'm not real excited about the idea of this offensive line. And throw that in, we're gonna potentially put in a 36-year-old quarterback who, no, is he late stages? Joe Namath, I heard that a lot today on the Joe Starkey show. No, he's not. But anybody who thinks Russell Wilson is mobile like Justin Fields is mobile, Justin Fields is a running quarterback. Russell Wilson is a mobile quarterback who can escape pressure, but he was sacked 100 times the last 2 years. I think there's a little bit of early stages Baker Mayfield in Russell Wilson's game. He thinks he's more athletic than he is at this point. He thinks he can escape like he did when he was 25. He can't escape like that anymore. And I know the social media highlights went out there that, oh, hey, I'm juking and I'm jiving, and I throw a nice little pass in a couple of Denver games. I noticed you didn't show the 100 sacks, though, that when you're showing this. So I'm very worried about this Jets game. I think Aaron Rodgers has historically always given us a lot of trouble. And if the offensive line is even more wounded, Isaac, Mason McCormick are going to have to play lights out next to McCollum.
No.
And we've got to hope that Broderick Jones and Dan Moore have the best game they've had in 2024 for us to have a real chance in this game. Because I think watching the Buffalo game last night, Ray Davis was really carving them up on the ground. I mean, this whole running quarterback and all this other stuff, when the Buffalo Bills needed the plays most, it was Josh Allen's legs. Not that he can't throw the ball. It was Josh Allen's legs that made the difference in that game. I do not see Russell Wilson rolling out on a 3rd and 3 and on a design quarterback run and picking up 5 yards. I just
now.
Do you think
I can see him.
Zach Frazier has anything to do with why they'd want to put Russ in? Like, that maybe there would be some increased stability at that position, maybe eliminate some of those handoff issues. But I don't know. To me, if there's a handoff issue, there's a handoff issue. Do you know what I mean? I didn't think they were Justin Fields' fault necessarily.
No, and I'm hoping that the center issue, as we move on and once Zach Frazier is officially ruled out for this week, I'm hoping that is weirdly enough the positive that makes them say, wait a second, maybe this isn't the week for Russell Wilson yet. Because if they're legitimately looking and we're like, okay, we're going to have a backup center, we have two tackles that are still trying to figure stuff out. Do we really want, and if they still decide to go with Russell Wilson with that happening, then we can all go apoplectic to Bob level about why on earth these offensive line decisions are being made. Because yeah, it's and Jennifer's absolutely right. We talked about it earlier that it doesn't matter how smart Russell Wilson is. He doesn't have the offense right now to do what he everyone's saying he wants to with it. So it's overall there's very few positives following. We're 4-2. That's your positive.
And just real quick for Yinzer down south and John about Dan Moore, the reason Dan Moore is still on the field and why Broderick Jones is still on the field is because we don't have any other tackles on the roster. Spencer Anderson is the emergency plan. Yeah. We don't have anybody else. We literally do not. They cannot substitute. It doesn't matter how bad they play. And if you need evidence of that, just rewatch the Raiders game. It doesn't matter how bad either one plays. They're not coming off the field. They don't have anyone else.
Yeah. I'll say this, that I think that it's very telling, like how poorly Broderick Jones has played, how poorly the offensive line has looked, is very telling that there really isn't much to say about Dan Moore, who was a hot topic last season quite a bit among Pittsburgh media. And this year, there's really nothing to say, because what do you say about the guy who's like, you know, smack in the middle of your group or whatever, because your group is, you know, so bad. So Dan Moore looks good in comparison to the other players.
I guess if you had two guys that, you know, were running hurdles and one guy's entire career tripped over every hurdle and one guy was jumping over it, and suddenly the guy jumping over it started tripping over it, you'd focus on the guy who all of a sudden is bad, not the guy who is still tripping over all the hurdles beside him.
Exactly.
So I think that's what's going on. And that's an excellent point on that.
And to be fair to Dan Moore, he has played a little better than expected. But I mean, let's not get twisted. I mean, he's on pace,
and that's high praise from Bob. That is high praise from Bob.
Yeah, let's not get it twisted, though. I mean, there's still 11 games to go. There's plenty of time for him to regress to his mean. But that being said,
I think Dan Moore has outplayed his draft position. Do you know what I mean? I think he's played better. That's than where most people would have expected him to end up. Do you know what I mean? I think he's improved every year. I think he's been a consummate professional working with these young guys. Do you know what I mean? I think all of those things about him. Does that mean that I think he's like a Pro Bowl level offensive lineman? No, you know, and he's just not there. And, you know, it worries me because we obviously didn't anticipate all of the injuries and absences on this offensive line, but to me, somebody's got to step in. I don't know who you bring in to work with Broderick Jones or get him back to where he needs to be, how you get him back where he was last year. But that has to happen like immediately.
And my last point on all of this to close out my good, bad, and the ugly is that I've been talking about it, and I'm going to sound like a broken record. This is another moment where bad behavior could be rewarded. If Russell Wilson comes in and the rest of the team pulls together like we have, where we eke out wins or all that, and they're like, hey, Russell Wilson's here, we're winning. I don't want that to happen. Weirdly enough, if we got to lose a game or it's got to be really ugly for a couple quarters to show, hey, Russell's a bad decision right now, I'd rather take that over 2 wins. That means we're not going back to Fields when we're going to need him down the stretch. So it's I want to look at the long term and what we need for that second half rather than just what these next 2 games mean.
Well, let me throw this hypothetical. If what Batko said is right and they bring Russell in to play these 2 games before the bye, right? Week 7 and 8.
Yeah.
And then that they feel like because Russ has been in the league for so long and they've seen him in these 2 games, now they have a good idea of who to choose for the gauntlet part of the end of our season. And they decide to go with Fields, would that make you feel better? Like we got this out of our system and chose Fields?
Only if at absolute worst we split the next 2 games. If we are 4-4 going into the bye, that is another massive missed opportunity, because technically the 2 losses that we had, we should have won. So that would be 4 losses that we should have won.
Yeah.
And it's not like, we're losing to like massive teams that should blow us out. So no, we got to go in with at least one win out of the next 2 games if that's going to be the hypothetical case.
I'd almost be okay with it if it meant they would say like Fields is the starter and then we could all just shut up about this and move on. Do you know what I mean? I'd almost be okay with it because I feel bad for the kid having this like hanging over his head all the time that he could be. I mean, he could always be yanked out of it, but
I'd agree if it meant that it wasn't if coming out of the bye, they're like, we looked at everything. Not only is Justin Fields our starter going forward, here's the contract we're signing him to. That kind of long term, that I would be okay with. Because if we're just like, okay, Justin, for this year, yet again, I don't want us to Mason Rudolph this kid. I don't want us to do that. We'll talk about that more as we go later on in the week. But yeah.
Well, I'm going to tell you that I have the exact opposite fear. I think my fear is that we beat the Jets 12-10 or 15-10 or 18-16 or something like that. Some crazy score where the offense kicks, Boz kicks 5 50-yard field goals. We win by a miracle. And then all of a sudden, we beat the Giants who theoretically, with neighbors are going to have a hard time. Even with neighbors are going to have a hard time scoring on us. Yeah. And then we turn around, we beat them, like most Giants games, 13-10, 16-13, something like that. Then we go into the bye week, and we're talking about how Russell Wilson got us to 2 victories. And then Tomlin's going to stick with him going, and everybody will just ignore the fact that the offense can't move and it's stagnated. This whole he'll open up the middle of the field. Russell Wilson completed 11% of his passes over the middle of the field last year. It's not what you think it's going to be. Now, that being said, though, I still hope we win the 2 games. I don't care if we win them ugly. I don't care if we win every game 3-0 and a snowplow comes out in the middle of the field. For those of you who remember the old Patriots, I don't care if we win. I'm going to care a lot if we lose, and I'm going to be very.
Yeah.
I mean, if this tanks the season, it's a coaching thing. That's all I got to say. I'm not going to get myself worked up over something that hasn't happened yet.
Right. So John, we talked about this a little bit last night. Yeah.
What does cramps mean? I don't understand the comment.
I think he's saying he has difficulty moving fluidly around the field.
I think isn't a different style because we were talking yesterday. He's built bigger. Stroud's a smaller kind of guy. Fields is, and Bob, I gotta say that was a good call. I went back and looked. Fields is bigger than I thought he was when I looked at comparison. I legitimately did. So he moved for what he is as a player. He moves very, very Stroud-like for that. So I understand what John's saying, but in perspective.
Well,
I thought
and it's apples and oranges.
Yeah, I think with Daniels, I said it last night. I think what's nice to watch about him is that kind of anticipation he has, that chemistry that he has with his wide receivers, and I think that's really good. But we talked about that being coachable, and so I think if you can take the positives Justin Fields has and build on them, I think we've got something to work with. But I also go back to waivers sometimes and go back to maybe our 2025 quarterback isn't on our roster right now. Do you know what I mean? Maybe it's not either of these guys, but then that makes me panic. So
we got to hope Justin Fields is the 2025 answer, because if not,
I want him to be.
Yeah, I mean, you got guys who are in the draft who, I'm sorry, folks, I think Quinn Ewers is actually pretty good, but there's no way we're going to get him because we're not going to be high enough to pick him. I mean, does Carson Beck do some good things? Yeah, he's okay. But I mean, I'm not ready for Kenny Pickett 3.0. And I think that's what this is. This is arguably a worse draft class than Kenny Pickett's draft class. Although, to be honest with you,
that's a good point. For everybody watching, whether it's in the comments or on social media, let us know if it's not going to be Wilson and it's not going to be Fields. Who do you want as your 2025 quarterback that you feel comfortable with? Because we'll definitely be talking about that on our upcoming episode. And let us know what you think, and we'll toss that in there, because that's a very interesting concept that we don't have nearly enough time to cover in depth right now. That's an excellent point, though.
What do you guys who knows social media really well? We should put a poll up for that for the next
year. I can do that.
Oh, there we go. We'll have a poll going. So
there we go. We'll get a poll up, and you can tell us what you think. All right. If you have tuned
if
in today to watch, oh, go ahead.
One quick thing. If anybody votes for Kyle Allen, you're automatically disqualified.
I don't know. He looked really good on that one play he had.
Yeah.
If you tuned in today for our good, bad, and the ugly, we greatly appreciate you. We ran a little bit longer than we usually do, but I think it was good conversation, and we had a lot of contributions from the viewers out there, and so we appreciate that. Jennifer and John and Charlotte, we appreciate you guys coming out and talking with us and helping spark some conversation. You can see our social media handles there under our names, so please give us a follow if you don't already. Follow the podcast and the Steeler Sanctuary page. You also like, share, and subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, which helps us out with the algorithms and makes us show up for other Steelers fans. And if you're watching this after the fact, like Zach said, please still comment. Let us know what you think, because we want to hear from you. We're able to bring those comments into our next episode. We will be back at the end of the week to preview the Jets game. And hopefully by then we have a little bit more of an idea of what the quarterback situation might be.
Yep.
Thank you all for watching.
Have a great day.
No, it's over.
Well, bye.